Should the ethnographic museum collect digital objects and practices? And if so, which one could be of interest? How does the internet open up new political spaces? Instead of creating content, media offers us platforms in which we create our own content. What does this mean for the political arena? Collecting partly online participatory cultures questions traditional museum practices. This form of digital heritage is more likely a network platform than a traditional cultural object.
You have to live inside the community that you're studying. My name is Tom Belsdorf. I'm a professor in the Department of Anthropology at the University of California, Irvine. And in Second Life, I'm a digital ethnographer.
How might the study of digital cultures change our understandings of citizenship, cultural identity, locality, and borders? And how does the digital affect our understanding of cultural memory?
It's interesting to see that a lot of digital anthropologists, and just talking from my own subfield, are studying the virtual, in fact, very much as material culture. How might preservation contribute to our understanding of digital cultures, digital subcultures? In fact, a very core task that ethnographic museums always have set themselves to do.
The location of the memorial in cyberspace contributes to a distinctive representation of the nation, conducive to decentering it from the seat of authority in Asmara. Maps and museum buildings with their, maps because of depicting boundaries, and museum buildings because of their specific locations emphasize the territorial nation and foreground the division between everything and everyone internal to the nation and all that lies outside it. An online memorial obscures borders and distances. Given the dispersion and displacement Eritreans have experienced, it's significant that no matter where they were located, if they could access a computer, Eritreans could experience the memorial firsthand once it appeared online. So the virtual location is in a sense equidistant from everywhere and could be inside and outside of Eritrea at the same time. But in 2008, so after 3 years, Awate reorganized its website and they moved the link from their homepage to their archives. And it's interesting, a lot of the websites that I studied initially maintained complete and accessible archives, which was like an incredible thing for a researcher to be able to do. But they have all changed that practice. And, very, very, very sadly. So for some time then, the memorial remained accessible in Awate's archives, but then they changed their practice of maintaining the complete archives, and at some point they deleted it. So I had checked in, there were some years went by when I wasn't checking it constantly, and I went looking for it in 2012, and I was able to find it as a screenshot that someone had saved somewhere. But just in preparing for this, I went looking for it again through Google searches, and I could only find it in the Wayback Machine. So, I mean, these, again, force us to think about the ambiguities of the spatialities and temporalities of cyberspace, that something that seemed so timeless and permanent and almost institution-like that we expect would be there can suddenly disappear, and other things that we think are just ephemeral and in a moment's passing actually end up having a long afterlife that we didn't expect.
I'm going to draw a parallel between the way that some people approach the digital and plastic. So I'm going to be talking about some of the problems of plastic replica objects and the way that they travel and the way that I've traced them through digital culture. Facebook, what do you do with all the animal sacrifice that turns up on your feed? And it turns up on my feed because I like it, and I like it to show people I understand why they're putting it there, and I know what they're doing, and I know that some of their ritual propitiation of success and things probably includes some of the research I've engaged them in. So if I'm part of that community, I know that they're slaughtering that pig for the greater good, and therefore like. But the problem is Facebook has now been trained to think that any time anybody sacrifices an animal that I might know, I need the video on my feed.
And the word globital is the bringing together of two words, global with bit, to signify that we need to think about these processes of globalization and digitization and digitality as contiguous forces, as synergetic dynamics. And the other thing that I think is really significant about the globital age is the way in which certain established binaries, which conceptually within academia we've been challenging for decades, are themselves also challenged within the globital age. So the notion of private and public memory are continually crossed and crisscrossed through things like Facebook, for example, and YouTube. The mobile phone in particular is a portal to an archive, to a world, and certainly in the research that I've done recently in a South London school, it suggests that the mobile phone therefore provides new kinds of trajectories, especially for parents, predominantly women in Britain at home with their children. However, it's then important to be attentive to the unevenness of that and the different practices associated with that. So if you look at a study, studies carried out, for example, in northern India, you will find that upon marriage, many women have their mobile phone taken from them. So they don't necessarily have the access to that sense of connection, and they will have to share a phone with their husband. So again, thinking about the 1% in relation to the 99% is important.
An unplayed video game or game only exists as a static thing, and is in fact a very sad thing. So only when it is played can the game can develop its potential. There are different approaches of collecting video games at the moment. The easiest way, of course, is just to buy the games. They come in a box, put a signature on them and put them in a library of some sort. The main problem here, of course, is that we have to deal with already obsolescence. Games as born digital artifacts that may have been released only a couple of years ago might already been obsolete because they run on obsolete formats or platforms. Already, we need specified media archaeological methods to unravel the mysteries of digital obsolescence, already, now. Preserving the source codes leads to a variety of new problems, I'm afraid. Most of the published video games are made by corporations. That means we have to deal with proprietary software. And video games, and especially game worlds, MMOs, are a dedicated ethnographical subject, not only from the view of preserving them, but rather the worlds and communities themselves.
Through vision and contact with people, the museum objects could start to perform anew. They are talking to us, or we are talking now, was the response that was given to me when I inquired about the relationship people had with digital images of their objects on computer screens. In addition to making ethnographic records and museum collections accessible on local computers, the Malka project has also developed a media production arm with a trained Yolngu film crew who has been extremely prolific in creating video content for the web. Many of these locally made short films, which range from music clips to ceremonial performances, fiction works, and animations, have been made accessible on the Malka Project YouTube channel, which I strongly encourage you to go and have a look at if you're interested. Together, this collection of self-authored videos reveals much about the ways in which digital media have inspired new creative practices for expressing thoughts and sentiments in the Yolngu world and beyond. In the late 20th century, in museum practice, more emphasis has been placed on indigenous knowledge and authority from source communities, showing that the meaning of collections are more open. In 2005, Museums Australia produced a revised policy document called Continuing Culture's Ongoing Responsibilities, which included a section on new technologies. And this section specified that technology projects do not occur in isolation from those principles and policies, and they should be considered and applied as appropriate to ensure that digitization projects meet appropriate levels of practice. Such strategies should be living agreements, and I stress this, living agreements regularly reviewed to ensure their relevance in light of changing law and lore. Dr. Gumbula made this second painting to on the computer and asked me to assemble the two paintings to represent how the structure of knowledge is completely linked to the performance of knowledge. And here you see the body painting designs of a man, ritual life cycle of a male of his own clan that correspond to the different stages of ceremony on the first painting.